Right.
Anywhere it can happen with or without the best training. But I think it may be one reason why we haven't had so many high-profile instances like we've seen elsewhere in Washington County.
When we talk about issues like, say, like with mental health, and I've talked with Senator Irwin and Judge Urain Washington about mental health situations, and most recently we've had two gentlemen be murdered after mental health calls were made, but police officers showed up.
Yeah.
And in those specific situations, if the mental health workers had shown up, and I understand that in police departments, when you call 911 and you ask for something, they're supposed to dispatch who you ask for. So if these weren't de-escalation specialists, why did they show up first, or why did they come try to take on these situations if they were only trained on a more or less one-dimensional and not really trying to, like I said, I know you don't know the case files, no, you don't know all the instances, but we had two instances where those families said we called for mental health situations. These two men had histories of mental health issues, but law enforcement showed up, and law enforcement ended up taking the lives of both of these men, but we never heard about the social workers of why they didn't come in. Is that something that we have in Washtenaw County? Because I've never heard about these situations until you hear them come across the TV or online or whatever. Do we have that type of situation? Because we obviously had our roster here.
Yeah.
If we had de-escalation specialists there, maybe she's in her kitchen cooking dinner tonight.
I agree. I agree, and that was somebody that was dealing with a mental health issue, and not only de-escalation, but as you mentioned, maybe the first responders should not have been police, should have been somebody that is a mental health expert. We do have, through community mental health, there are you can call and get a mental health professional to show up as a sort of rapid response team in Washtenaw County. Now, that's funded in part through the millage that we passed a few years ago. And the truth of the matter is, we talk about resources. Does it always happen? And I don't know the cases you're mentioning. No. And part of the reason is just like fundamentally a lack of resources. But I know this community is trying to make it such that unless there's a real, imminent threat, a hostage situation or something like that, then you've got to send the police, of course. But that if it's a mental health call, the presumption is the first responders aren't necessarily police, but are trained mental health professionals. On a larger scale, this is really just a resource issue, and it's a question of like where we are putting our resources. And I got to tell you that what keeps me up at night more than anything is I think we are going to see a second pandemic after we get through COVID that is a pandemic of mental health issues, because we've been cooped up inside. This has been a traumatizing year plus, not even to mention the 4 years of Donald Trump. And I actually don't say that facetiously. Like that was traumatizing for a lot of people, where our country is right now, right? And we're distrustful. We talked about going next door to your neighbor's house. Well, we're probably envisioning a non-COVID world where you might do that. Now you're going to your neighbor's house, and because of the virus, you're both threats to each other's safety. It is a toxic stew of potentially looming mental health issues, and you're seeing this reflected around the country. You've got youth suicides that are through the roof because kids, like teenagers, they're social creatures. They're not meant to be like an online Zoom all day. And we got to do this because of the pandemic. I'm not saying these health measures are
absolutely
wrong. But you're seeing like road rage incidents with guns go through the roof because people are just on edge and don't know how to deal with each other. We're going to be dealing with this even after the pandemic. We're going to be dealing with it for I think a number of years. I hope I'm wrong, but I really worry about the mental health implications, and it's going to make us much less safe, especially if our response to it is just like, well, the criminal justice system can and should respond to that. So what I'm really hoping to see, and I'll say this, we've got this stimulus package that's being debated in Washington. I am hoping that Congress and President Biden do the right thing and think a little bit down the road and have funding allocated to states and local government around mental health specifically, because otherwise we're going to be caught flat-footed, which with what I do think is going to be a second pandemic that's going to make all of us less safe, and it's going to result in a number of different tragedies, not just shooting at each other, but suicides and depression and any host of mental illness related issues. We got to get out ahead of it.